The forbidden warship. The HMS Thunderchild hung suspended in the orbital drydock, its sleek, predatory form partially obscured by the scaffolding that surrounded it. At just over 3 kilometers in length, the warship was the pinnacle of human military engineering and the most controversial creation in the history of interstellar diplomacy. Captain Ilara Voss stood at the observation deck, her gray eyes fixed on the vessel she had commanded for less than a year before it was decommissioned. The ship's midnight black hull absorbed the light from the nearby sun, making it appear like a tear in the fabric of space itself. Only the occasional flash of blue energy from its dormant systems revealed the power that lay within. "Still admiring your old command, Captain." Admiral Chen's voice startled her. Voss turned to see the older man approach, his uniform immaculate despite the early hour. His weathered face bore the lines of someone who had spent decades navigating both the dangers of space and the treacherous waters of interspecies politics. "Just wondering why I was called here, sir," Voss replied, straightening her posture. "The Thunderchild has been decommissioned for 8 months now." Order of the Galactic Alliance. Chen's lips twitched into something resembling a smile. "Officially, yes, but we've maintained her systems in, let's call it, a state of readiness." Voss raised an eyebrow. "That's a violation of the Treaty of Proxima, sir." "So it is." Chen moved to stand beside her, gazing out at the massive warship. "Tell me, Captain, do you know why the Alliance was so adamant about decommissioning the Thunderchild?" "They claimed our dimensional phasing technology violated established weapons conventions," Voss said carefully. "That the ability to shift partially out of normal spacetime during combat gave us an unfair tactical advantage." Chen snorted. "That's the diplomatic version. The truth is simpler. They're afraid of us. Voss, afraid of what humanity might become." The incident that had led to the Thunderchild's decommissioning was still fresh in Voss's mind. During what was supposed to be a standard joint military exercise, the ship had demonstrated just a fraction of its capabilities. Using its dimensional phase drive, the Thunderchild had appeared to be in multiple locations simultaneously, firing weapons that seemingly passed through the most advanced shields of the Alliance vessels as if they weren't there. The exercise had been terminated immediately. Within a week, the Alliance Council had unanimously voted to ban the technology, citing it as an extinction-level threat to galactic stability. "With respect, sir, I'm not sure why we're discussing ancient history," Voss said. Chen activated his wrist computer, projecting a hologram between them. It showed a pulsing signal, oscillating in a pattern Voss had never seen before. "This distress beacon was detected 72 hours ago, originating from the Cygnus Void," Chen explained. "It doesn't match any known Alliance or independent species communication protocols." Voss frowned. "The Cygnus Void is beyond Alliance space. No one goes there." "Exactly. And in the last 48 hours, 3 frontier outposts along the border of the Void have gone silent. No distress calls, no signs of attack. They simply stopped communicating." A chill ran down Voss's spine. "You think whatever sent this signal is responsible?" "I don't know," Chen admitted. "But I do know that the Security Council has authorized a reconnaissance mission, quietly, without informing the Alliance." "And you want the Thunderchild," Voss concluded, understanding dawning. "Because whatever's out there might require capabilities beyond what our conventional fleet possesses." Chen nodded. "The Council is prepared to weather the diplomatic fallout if necessary. But we need someone who knows that ship inside and out. Someone who won't hesitate if difficult decisions need to be made." Voss looked back at the Thunderchild, feeling a mixture of anticipation and dread. "When do we leave?" "You have 24 hours to select a skeleton crew, people you trust implicitly. This mission is completely off the books. If you're caught, the official position will be that you went rogue." "Understood, sir." Voss paused. "May I ask, who will be my XO?" "Commander Talon Hayes has already volunteered," Chen replied. Voss couldn't hide her surprise. Hayes had been her second in command before the decommissioning, a brilliant tactical officer whose career had been derailed by the Thunderchild incident. He'd been reassigned to a desk job, his talents wasted on paperwork. "And Chief Engineer Nakamura?" she asked hopefully. "Already prepping the ship's systems," she said, and I quote, "Tell the captain it'll be like we never left." For the first time in months, Voss felt a spark of excitement. Nakamura was perhaps the only person who truly understood how the dimensional phase drive worked. If anyone could get the Thunderchild operational again, it was her. "I'll need Dr. Chandra for medical," Voss said, her mind already assembling her ideal crew. "And Lieutenant Quan for communications." Chen nodded. "Whatever you need. But remember, absolute secrecy is essential. If the Alliance gets wind of this before you're beyond their sensor range, there will be complications." 18 hours later, Voss stepped onto the bridge of the Thunderchild. The familiar hum of the ship's systems enveloped her, bringing back memories of her brief command. The bridge was sparsely populated, only essential personnel at each station, but every face she saw was one she trusted with her life. "Captain on the bridge," Commander Hayes announced, his tall frame straightening as she entered. "At ease," Voss said, moving to the command chair. "Status report." "All systems green," Hayes replied. "Engineer Nakamura reports the phase drive is operational but recommends limited use until she can complete full diagnostics." Voss nodded. "Lieutenant Quan, what's our window for departure?" The young communications officer looked up from her station. "Alliance patrol vessels are currently on the far side of Earth orbit. We have approximately 30 minutes before they'll be in position to detect an unauthorized launch." "Perfect. Begin disengaging docking clamps. Power up main engines, but keep them at minimum output. Let's not announce ourselves until we're ready to make our exit." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, despite their long absence from the ship. Voss felt the subtle vibration as the Thunderchild's engines awakened, a predator stirring from hibernation. "Captain," Hayes said quietly, moving to stand beside her chair, "you should know. The crew is aware of the risks. If we're caught, we're all facing court-martial." Voss met his gaze. "Are you having second thoughts, Commander?" Hayes smiled, the expression transforming his usually stern face. "Not a chance. Just making sure you know we're all in this together." "Docking clamps disengage," announced the operations officer. "We are free to maneuver. Take us out, helm. 1/4 thrust until we clear the lunar orbit, then prepare for dimensional jump." The Thunderchild glided away from the orbital dock, its movements deceptively graceful for a vessel of its size. On hundreds of monitoring stations across Earth and the lunar colonies, alarms would soon begin to sound as the ship's energy signature was detected. "Captain, we're being hailed by Orbital Command," Quan reported. "They're demanding we return to dock immediately." "Acknowledge receipt, but do not respond further," Voss ordered. "Time to lunar orbit threshold." 3 minutes, Captain." Voss tapped a command into her chair's computer, bringing up the mysterious signal on her display. The pulsing pattern continued, unchanged since its discovery. Whatever was sending it was either incredibly patient or incapable of altering its message. "Captain, 5 Alliance vessels have altered course to intercept," the tactical officer reported. "Estimated time to weapons range, 15 minutes. "They won't catch us," Voss said confidently. "Helm, as soon as we clear lunar orbit, execute dimensional jump. Destination: the edge of the Cygnus void." "Aye, Captain." Jump coordinates locked in. The minutes passed in tense silence, the crew acutely aware that they were committing an act that could be interpreted as treason. Not just against Earth, but against the entire Alliance. Lunar orbit cleared. The helm officer announced, "Ready for dimensional jump on your mark." Voss took a deep breath. Once they activated the phase drive, there would be no turning back. The Thunderchild would become a fugitive vessel, and her crew would be branded as renegades. "Execute jump," she ordered. The view screen showed a momentary distortion as the space around the Thunderchild began to ripple. The stars smeared into lines, then vanished altogether as the ship partially phased out of normal spacetime. Unlike conventional FTL travel, there was no sensation of movement. Only the ship's computers confirmed they were traveling at speeds that violated what most species considered possible. Jump successful, Hayes reported. Estimated arrival at the Cygnus void, 47 hours. Voss nodded, settling back in her chair. Maintain alert status. I want all sensor data from the void analyzed before we arrive. Whatever sent that signal, I want to know what we're dealing with. As the Thunderchild slipped through the dimensional boundaries between normal space, Earth became a distant problem. Ahead lay the unknown, a mystery at the edge of explored space, and potentially a threat greater than any diplomatic fallout. The journey to the Cygnus void was spent in methodical preparation. Voss ordered continuous drills, pushing her skeleton crew to perform the functions normally handled by 3 times their number. The Thunderchild's weapon systems were thoroughly tested, everything except the dimensional phase cannons, which would have created energy signatures detectable even across vast distances. In her quarters, Voss reviewed what little information existed about the Cygnus void. It was a region of space approximately 12 light-years across, characterized by unusually few stars and a strange background radiation that interfered with long-range sensors. Most species avoided it, citing navigational hazards, but Voss suspected it was simpler than that. An instinctive aversion to the emptiness, the cosmic equivalent of avoiding a dark cave. Captain to the bridge, Hayes's voice came through the intercom. We're approaching the source of the signal. When Voss arrived, the view screen showed the edge of the void, a region where stars seemed to thin out, creating a perceptible darkness in the cosmic tapestry. Status of the signal, she asked. Still broadcasting, same pattern, Quan replied. We've pinpointed the source. It appears to be coming from what remains of an Alliance research vessel. The view screen shifted, showing the twisted wreckage of what had once been a large ship. Its hull was torn open in multiple places, exposing the interior to vacuum. There were no signs of weapons damage. Instead, the vessel appeared to have been pulled apart from within, as if some immense force had exploded outward. Life signs, Voss asked quietly. None detected, the science officer reported. The ship's been dead for approximately 3 weeks, based on radiation decay. I recognize that configuration, Hayes said, staring at the wreckage. That's an Arcturian science vessel. The Arcturians are one of the founding members of the Alliance. What were they doing out here? The better question, Voss replied, is what happened to them. She turned to the tactical officer. Any signs of other vessels in the area? No, Captain. But there's something strange about the space surrounding the wreckage. Readings suggest localized distortions in the fabric of spacetime, similar to what our phase drive creates, but different, more unstable. Voss felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's temperature. Maintain distance. Prepare a probe for launch. I want detailed scans of that wreckage without getting any closer. As the crew carried out her orders, Voss couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The void lived up to its name, empty, silent, yet somehow threatening in its very emptiness. The probe launched, a small automated vessel equipped with the Thunderchild's most sensitive scanning technology. It approached the Arcturian wreckage cautiously, its sensors recording every detail. Receiving probe telemetry, the science officer announced. Beginning analysis now. The data appeared on screens around the bridge, showing the devastation in greater detail. The Arcturian ship had been torn apart with tremendous force, yet there were no signs of conventional weapons. Instead, the damage patterns suggested something had emerged from within the vessel itself. Captain, the science officer said, his voice tight with tension, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from inside the primary hull section. It appears to be growing. Growing? Voss leaned forward. Clarify. The energy signature is expanding, becoming more complex. It's almost as if. The probe's transmission abruptly cut off. On the view screen, a flash of light engulfed the small vessel, vaporizing it instantly. Evasive maneuvers, Voss commanded. Shields up, weapons online. The Thunderchild responded immediately, its engines flaring as it pulled away from the wreckage. But it was already too late. The space around the Arcturian vessel began to distort, twisting in impossible ways, as if reality itself was being torn apart. From the center of the distortion emerged something. Not a ship, not a creature, but something that defied classification. It appeared as a shifting mass of darkness punctuated by points of brilliant light, constantly changing form while maintaining a vaguely spherical shape. "What the hell is that?" Hayes whispered. As if in response, the entity pulsed, sending out a wave of energy that washed over the Thunderchild. Every system on the ship flickered momentarily as the wave passed through. "It's scanning us," the science officer reported. "I've never seen technology like this. It's as if it's probing not just our systems, but the very atoms of our ship." Voss gripped the arms of her command chair. They had come seeking answers about a mysterious signal. Instead, they had found something far worse, an unknown entity with technology that rivaled or exceeded even the Thunderchild's capabilities. The entity pulsed again, brighter this time. On the sensors, more distortions began to appear throughout the void, as if answering a call. "Captain," Hayes said urgently, "I think we just woke something up." Voss stared at the growing number of distortions. Whatever these entities were, they had remained hidden in the void, perhaps for centuries or millennia. And now, thanks to human curiosity, they were awakening. The Thunderchild had been banned because the Alliance feared its power. Now, facing something that made even her mighty vessel seem insignificant, Voss understood a greater truth. The galaxy had far more to fear than human ingenuity. "Battle stations," she ordered quietly, "and send a message to Earth. Tell them we're going to need more ships." Defiance of the stars. The Thunderchild shuddered as another energy wave washed over its hull. Throughout the bridge, displays flickered and gravity momentarily faltered. The entity, what the crew had started calling the Void Spectre, continued to pulse with increasing intensity, each pulse summoning more distortions across the Cygnus void. "Shields holding at 62%, reported the tactical officer, her voice remarkably steady despite the circumstances. "But each pulse is draining them by approximately 3%. Captain Voss studied the tactical display, watching as the number of entities continued to grow. Already, their sensors had detected 27 distinct signatures, each one seemingly communicating with the others through the pulses of energy. "Distance to the nearest Alliance outpost?" she asked. "Nearest functioning outpost is Starbase 47, approximately 6 light-years from our position," Commander Hayes answered. "But Captain, even at maximum conventional speed, it would take us days to reach it. And we'd lead these things straight to an unprepared civilian population," Voss concluded grimly. She turned to the communications officer. "Lieutenant Quan, has Earth acknowledged our transmission?" "Yes, Captain. Admiral Chen confirms receipt of our initial data packet." There, Quan hesitated, consulting with Alliance leadership about an appropriate response. Voss almost laughed. She could imagine the chaos their message had caused. Earth's military leadership scrambling to explain why they'd reactivated a banned warship, while simultaneously trying to convince skeptical alien representatives that an unknown threat was emerging from the Cygnus void. "They'll be arguing while we're being torn apart," Hayes muttered. "Then we'll have to give them more time," Voss decided. She looked at the tactical officer. "What's the status of our phase drive?" "Operational, Captain, but Engineer Nakamura advises against prolonged use until—" "Tell Nakamura I need options, not cautions," Voss interrupted. "Commander Hayes, I need a tactical assessment. Can we engage these entities directly?" Hayes frowned at the sensor readings. Conventional weapons would be ineffective against energy formations like these, but the phase cannons might work. They're designed to affect targets across dimensional boundaries. "The very weapons the Alliance banned," Voss noted with irony. Prepare the phase cannons. Target the primary entity, the one that emerged from the Arcturian vessel. The bridge crew exchanged glances, aware that using the forbidden weapons would eliminate any chance of clemency from the Alliance. But facing extinction, diplomatic consequences seemed trivial. Phase cannons charging. The tactical officer confirmed, ready to fire in 30 seconds. The Thunderchild's power systems hummed as energy was diverted to the ship's most devastating weapons. Unlike conventional energy weapons, the phase cannons didn't fire projectiles or beams. Instead, they created localized ruptures in space-time, collapsing matter into temporary micro-singularities. The entities are moving, Hayes reported, watching the sensor display. They're forming a pattern, almost like they're preparing to. A massive surge of energy erupted from the combined entities, striking the Thunderchild with devastating force. The ship spun wildly as systems overloaded across all decks. Shields down to 28%. The tactical officer shouted over the blaring alarms. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 9. Emergency bulkheads engaged. Voss gripped her command chair as the inertial dampeners struggled to compensate for the ship's violent motion. Fire phase cannons, all batteries. The Thunderchild's response was immediate and devastating. From specialized emplacements along its hull, ripples of distorted space erupted outward, crossing the vacuum between the ship and the void specters in milliseconds. Where they struck, reality itself seemed to fold inward, creating miniature black holes that lasted only moments but consumed everything within their radius. 3 of the smaller entities vanished completely, drawn into the collapsing pockets of space-time. The primary entity, larger and seemingly more robust, suffered visible damage, its coherent energy form breaking apart at the edges. Direct hits. The tactical officer reported with satisfaction. 3 targets destroyed, primary target damage. But their victory was short-lived. The damaged entity pulsed again, but instead of attacking, it seemed to be communicating, not with the other entities, but with the Thunderchild itself. The ship's computer systems suddenly activated without command, screens throughout the bridge displaying rapidly scrolling alien symbols. We're being hacked, Hayes realized. But how? Our systems are isolated from external networks. Not hacked, corrected the science officer, staring at his readings with fascination. It's establishing a communication protocol. These symbols, they're not random. They're adapting to match our language parameters. The symbols gradually resolved into recognizable letters. Then words, though the syntax remained strange and fractured. We are You are forbidden. We recognize you. They know what we are, Voss whispered. They recognize our technology. The message continued. The others banned you, feared you, as they feared us. We HFY waited. Now we emerge. It's talking about the Alliance, Hayes said, saying they banned our technology for the same reason they, what? Contained these entities. A new series of images appeared on the screen, ancient star charts showing the Cygnus void surrounded by warning markers. The symbols were unfamiliar from civilizations that predated the current Alliance by millennia. They imprisoned us, feared our evolution, as they fear yours. The implications were staggering. These entities hadn't originated in the void. They had been confined there, sealed away by ancient species who feared their power. And now they saw humanity's dimensional technology as kindred to their own abilities. Captain, the science officer called out, I've completed analysis of the Arcturian vessel's data logs. It wasn't a research mission. It was an inspection. They were checking the integrity of some kind of containment system at the center of the void. A containment system that was failing, Voss guessed, and when they investigated too closely, they accidentally released what was inside. Hayes finished, just like in every horror story ever told. The entity pulsed again, this time without aggression. More words appeared. Join US. Together, we will replace the old order. Your evolution and ours. Luministo payable. Voss felt a chill. The entity was proposing an alliance, humans, and these void creatures against the rest of the galaxy. It recognized humanity's potential, our willingness to push boundaries that other species considered taboo. Captain, Quan interrupted urgently. I'm receiving a transmission. It's from an Alliance fleet. They've just entered the system. The tactical display updated to show 27 vessels approaching from the direction of Alliance space, a hastily assembled response force consisting of ships from multiple species. How did they respond so quickly? Hayes wondered. They didn't, Voss realized. They were already on their way. The Alliance knew about the containment failure before we did. That's why those outposts went silent. They were evacuated quietly. The Alliance commander's face appeared on the main view screen. An Arcturian, his 4 eyes blinking in their characteristic pattern of distress. Human vessel Thunderchild, the Arcturian said, his translator giving his words a mechanical cadence. You have violated the Treaty of Proxima by activating banned technology. Furthermore, you have interfered in a classified Alliance security operation. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Hayes snorted. We're facing an existential threat, and they're worried about treaty violations. Voss raised a hand to silence him, then addressed the Arcturian. Alliance Commander, we've established communication with the entities from the Void. They claim they were imprisoned here by ancient civilizations. Is this true? The Arcturian's eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of agitation. That information is classified at the highest level. The fact that you've communicated with the breach entities is deeply concerning. They are deceptive and extremely dangerous. Why was humanity not informed of their existence? Voss demanded. If they're as dangerous as you claim, shouldn't all species be prepared? The Alliance High Council determined that certain species would misinterpret the information. The Arcturian replied carefully. Species with aggressive expansion tendencies. Species like humans. The implication was clear. The Alliance hadn't just banned the Thunderchild's technology. They had kept humanity in the dark about genuine threats to galactic security because they didn't trust how humans would respond. The containment systems have been failing for decades, the Arcturian continued. We've managed to repair them temporarily, but this breach is the most serious yet. Now, Captain Voss, I must insist that you withdraw. This situation is beyond your authority. Before Voss could respond, the primary entity pulsed again, sending energy waves not toward the Thunderchild, but toward the approaching Alliance fleet. On the tactical display, several of the smaller Alliance vessels suddenly went dark as their systems were overwhelmed. They want to Immerse on US again, the entity communicated. They will Immerse on you too, into a alloy. Your potential threatens them. The Alliance commander's image flickered as his ship's communications were affected. What have you done? He demanded. Are you collaborating with these abominations? We've done nothing, Voss replied coldly. But perhaps if you'd been honest with us from the beginning, we could have coordinated our response. The entity continued to attack the Alliance fleet, its power growing as more of the smaller entities joined with it. The fleet's formation broke apart as ships attempted to evade the energy pulses, their conventional shields proving inadequate against the dimensional attacks. Voss stood from her command chair, facing a decision that would determine not just the fate of her ship and crew, but potentially the future relationship between humanity and the Alliance. She could join forces with the void entities against an alliance that had lied to and marginalized humanity. Or she could defend the very coalition that had condemned her ship and stripped her of command. But there was a third option, one that relied on the unique capabilities of the Thunderchild and the ingenuity that made humans so feared and respected. Engineer Nakamura, she called over the comm. I need you to reconfigure the phase drive. Can you create a controlled dimensional collapse around the primary entity? There was a pause before Nakamura's voice responded. You're talking about using the drive as a weapon, creating a permanent dimensional rift. Not permanent, Voss clarified. Just stable enough to contain the entity until a proper solution can be developed. Can it be done? Theoretically, yes, but it would require channeling power from every system on the ship, including life support. We'd have minutes of emergency reserves at most. Do it, Voss ordered. She turned to Hayes. Prepare to evacuate the crew to the emergency shuttles. Set course directly for the primary entity. Hayes' eyes widened. Captain, if we get that close when the drive collapses, the Thunderchild might not survive, Voss acknowledged, but will have contained the threat. As the bridge crew rushed to carry out her orders, Voss opened a channel to the Alliance commander. Alliance fleet, this is Captain Voss. We're going to attempt to create a dimensional containment field around the primary entity. I suggest you withdraw to a safe distance. The Arcturian's expression shifted from hostility to confusion. Such technology is beyond current capabilities. The power requirements alone ruled. Not beyond human capabilities, Voss interrupted. The very technology you banned might save us all. Now withdraw your ships or lose them. To his credit, the Arcturian recognized the sincerity of her warning. Pulling back now. But Captain, what you're attempting is a solution, Voss finished for him. Something your alliance couldn't provide. Remember that. The Thunderchild's engines flared as it accelerated toward the heart of the void entity swarm. Throughout the ship, non-essential systems shut down as power was diverted to the phase drive. Emergency lights cast red shadows across the corridors as crew members rushed to the evacuation shuttles. On the bridge, only Voss, Hayes, and a skeleton crew remained. Final shuttle launching now, Captain, Hayes reported. All non-essential personnel evacuated. Good, Voss nodded. Time to phase drive overload. 8 minutes. Engineer Nakamura has programmed the collapse sequence. Once initiated, we'll have approximately 40 seconds to reach minimum safe distance. Voss smiled grimly. Not a lot of margin for error. The Thunderchild continued its approach, now deep within the swarm of entities. The primary entity seemed to sense their intention, sending increasingly desperate attacks against the ship's failing shields. You cannot contain us, the entity communicated. We OFFERDed alliance, PRT near ship. Some partnerships aren't worth the cost, Voss replied, though she knew the entity couldn't hear her words. 2 minutes to optimal position, Hayes announced. Phase drive energy levels approaching critical. The ship shuddered as another attack struck its hull directly. Warning klaxons blared as structural integrity fields struggled to compensate. Hull breach on Deck 3. The tactical officer reported. We can't take much more of this. We won't have to, Voss assured her. Initiate phase drive collapse sequence. The tactical officer entered the commands with trembling fingers. Sequence initiated. 40 seconds to collapse. All remaining personnel to the command shuttle, Voss ordered. Commander Hayes, take the con. Hayes frowned. Captain, you're coming too. Someone needs to ensure the drive collapses properly, Voss said quietly. The sequence might need manual adjustments. Go, Commander. That's an order. For a moment, Hayes looked like he might argue, but years of military discipline prevailed. He gave a sharp nod, then gestured for the remaining bridge crew to follow him to the emergency lift. It's been an honor serving with you, Captain, he said simply. Likewise, Commander. Now go save our crew. As the bridge emptied, Voss moved to the engineering station, watching the phase drive's power levels climb toward the point of no return. Around the ship, the void entities continued their assault, perhaps sensing the threat the Thunderchild now posed. Through the view screen, Voss could see the command shuttle detaching from the ship, accelerating away from the danger zone. At least her crew would survive to tell the story of what happened here. 30 seconds to collapse, the computer announced dispassionately. Voss made a final adjustment to the drive parameters, ensuring the dimensional rift would be precisely calibrated to contain the entities. As she worked, she reflected on the irony of her situation. The Alliance had feared the Thunderchild's technology because of its potential for destruction. Now that same technology would be used to save them. 20 seconds to collapse. The primary entity seemed to realize what was happening. It gathered its energy for one final, massive attack against the Thunderchild. Voss braced herself as the ship's remaining shields buckled under the assault. 10 seconds to collapse. The bridge lights failed completely, leaving only the glow of emergency systems and the eerie illumination from the view screen. Through it, Voss could see the swirling mass of the primary entity, its form twisting as if in rage or fear. 5 seconds. Voss closed her eyes, picturing Earth, not its cities or technology, but its natural beauty. The oceans, the mountains, the forests. A world worth protecting, even at the cost of her life. Collapse initiated. The Thunderchild's phase drive activated one final time, but instead of shifting the ship through dimensions, it created a rupture in space-time itself. The fabric of reality tore open around the primary entity, creating a pocket dimension, a prison specifically designed to contain beings that existed partially outside normal space. The entity's form distorted as it was pulled into the rift, its energy dissipating as it fought against the inevitable. The smaller entities followed, drawn by their connection to the primary being. Within seconds, the swarm that had threatened the galaxy was gone, sealed away in a dimensional pocket that would hold them for centuries. But the Thunderchild had not escaped. The ship's hull groaned as space-time warped around it, systems failing catastrophically as the phase drive consumed itself in its final act. Voss felt the deck shifting beneath her feet as the artificial gravity failed completely. Through the view screen, she could see the Alliance fleet in the distance, maintaining their position at the edge of the danger zone. They had witnessed what the Thunderchild had done, what humanity was capable of. As the ship began to break apart around her, Voss smiled. They had feared the Thunderchild because they didn't understand it. Now they would fear humanity for an entirely different reason, not because of our capacity for destruction, but because of our willingness to sacrifice for the greater good. The final collapse of the phase drive engulfed the bridge in brilliant white light. Captain Ilara Voss closed her eyes and surrendered to the inevitable. 3 weeks later, Commander Talon Hayes stood before the Alliance Council in their massive chamber on Arcturus Prime. Representatives from 57 Space,